watching us, listening to us. Welcome to this, which is our last event in our Shakespeare Sunday series. It will be not, as you'll hear in a minute, our final Shakespeare event, but for the month of April, we thought to celebrate Shakespeare's birth month by doing a series of these Sunday events. Last week, if you were lucky enough, you got to hear Michael Kumsty taking us through a bit of an actor's process through textual analysis by showing us some of his Hamlet. And we thought to end the series this week by, in a way, kind of launching another thing, which is actually to try to experience one of the plays together. We have, as a theater, been talking a lot about, the very many ways in which this pandemic and quarantine is seeming so antithetical to our lives as theater artists, which depend so on being in the same room with people, and as we say, breathing the same air. But in some attempt to keep our connection to our audience and keep our artists working their muscles, we're trying out some different things in this virtual world. I had the notion that it might be worthwhile to an audience who are sitting at home thinking about Shakespeare to have a way to experience the plays outside of the movies and whatnot that are out there for all of us to see. And one of the things that we started a few years ago at Two River was this thing we called the Shakespeare Reading Group. I make this proposition, which is not a proposition unlike that which people have made for centuries, that a play is not really meant to be read alone at home in a book. A play, of course, is meant to be heard. I say this a lot in that Shakespeare Reading Group, that one of the things about the Elizabethans that I think is very telling about how they approach theater is they didn't speak of going to see a show. They would talk about going to hear a show. Hey, let's go and hear a show or hear a play. And I think that process of an actor's going through what a playwright gives him or her in terms of the text and the words to get to a place of enacting that through language, out the mouth, through the voice, and into the hearer's ear is the process that was really intended. It was the way in which it was supposed to go. So I always feel bad. I feel bad for myself. I feel bad for students that I talk to and audiences who say that they want to be prepared and to understand Shakespeare better. And so we all think a way to do that is to sit at home and really study the plays and read them. I contend, and I think most people who try would also argue that that's not the best way to figure out what's going on in these plays and to experience them. You really have to hear them and or try to speak them aloud. So we have set up this Shakespeare Reading Group at the theater, and we've done it a few times where audiences come in, we all read it together. But for this, we're going to try to do it in this Zoom platform where we'll have a bunch of our staff members. We've made together this loose group of actors from the Two River Theater staff, who we're calling the Two River Players, in large part out of necessity, because I thought it'd be fun to have actors do this, but Actors Equity and we, the theaters, have not yet figured out a way that Actors Equity is comfortable with us using this platform for actors to do what they're normally accustomed to doing on the stage. So we're going to force these staff members to try it. And so the idea is that we're going to read an act of a play every week, one act of 5 every week. We're launching this week with the first act of Romeo and Juliet. We're going to switch and no longer do these on Sundays, but we're going to switch to Wednesdays. So starting in May, and on May 6th, we'll pick up with Act 2 of Romeo and Juliet and onward. Yeah, so Romeo and Juliet, that was the play that I thought be fun for us to look at for a few different reasons. One, because I think it's one that people know, and often people know it I would say because they've read it. I think it's still true in a lot of public schools across the country that Romeo and Juliet is one of the plays that every student reads in such and such a grade, 8th grade or 9th grade or something. So we all probably have some old experience of having tried to read it. Some of us have probably had the good fortune of seeing a good group of actors do it, but maybe not everybody. So I thought since everybody has some kind of base knowledge of this play, it would be a good one to try to read. So for that reason. And then also it is the next play sort of on our list at Two River to think about producing. And in part that comes for a couple of reasons. One, I've noticed that there are people kind of playing around with this play. There are a couple of sort of adaptations of it that I think are interesting, including something that we did in a Crossing Borders reading a couple of years ago. We did a reading of this Spanish translation by Pablo Neruda of Romeo and Juliet that was built into a musical with songs written by this marvelous Argentine songwriter called Sophia Rey. And we did a reading of that play with those songs, and it was really quite effective and beautiful. And I thought it'd be fun to think about trying to do that. So I was thinking about that, and then having conversations with Sara Holdren, a marvelous director, marvelous human being, and director and Shakespearean, who's been around Two River for the last few years, most recently directing our production of Twelfth Night. And it turns out that this is a play that she's interested in, and when she's interested in something, I think we should all sit up and get interested. So she and I have started talking about putting together a production of the play. So I thought for those reasons it'd be good to do it. But also I think lots of people are thinking about this situation that we're in a pandemic with a sort of plague going on around us and all of us in quarantine. And I think most of you know that when you know your Elizabethan history, you know that the various plague times had such a great influence on Shakespeare in his work, as of course it did on his audience, and aspects and notions of the plague have made their way into most of the plays. But Romeo and Juliet is one where the actual plague and quarantining has something very important to do in the plot. And I thought might be interesting to see that from this point of view of our literal and true full-bodied understanding of what that means that we are now all experiencing. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at the play through that lens. So I think that's all I want to say about the why and the wherefore. One of the things I happen to love about this play, and I teach this class every year in Shakespeare to students, dramaturgy students up at Columbia, and I hope for them that they get a couple of things that they take away at the end. But one is one of the things I love most about Shakespeare, which is that I think he contains multitudes. And one of the ways in which he kind of, I think, tries to touch this notion of multitudinousness and in a way infinity is to use this kind of rhetorical idea, which is a psychological and a philosophical idea of antithesis. And that in Shakespeare's language throughout, but also in his big ideas, he's often, if you remember that word antithesis from high school English, it's the notion of kind of setting one idea up against another one. And Shakespeare uses that all the time. He uses it in a kind of microcosmic and in a macrocosmic way. And I think what he's getting at, or what he's struggling to get at, is that the things we often think that describe and define and tell us what something is about, what life is about, seem either to be this or this, black or white. And what he's, I think, realizing always is that those things that we set up that seem to be the boundaries of what a thing could be are actually only that, the boundaries of what a thing could be. But in fact, the thing itself is somewhere in the middle, somewhere in between there. And that if you think of that idea of what is possibly existing between the boundaries of two things, being, if you keep dividing it in half, will eventually lead you to infinity. That very often this idea of looking for the extent and shape of something actually leads you to see that it's almost infinite, whatever that thing is. And in the case of this play, he's doing that, as you'll see, and I just want to point that out, to look for these different places of antithesis that he's setting us up with images, ideas, but also it's very thematic. The larger ideas of love and hate, and youth and age, and time being fast and slow, and all the different ways that he's setting one thing up against another. Even, of course, the title itself, Romeo and Juliet, the Capulets, the Montagues. But that if we look for this force, this energy, this tension that's in the antithesis, it's gonna help us see a lot of what the driver and the engine is of the play. So I wanted to say that. What else? So just to give you some ground rules about how we're doing this, what we're kind of pretending as a company of the Two River Players is that we are showing up for the first day of rehearsal. And this is our first day at the table read. So all these actors are kind of doing a cold reading as if we were around the table for that first day of rehearsal. And what we're going to do is just read straight through the first act. And I'm going to ask that you in the audience and the actors themselves take any notes along the way, any questions that you might have, comments, observations. If you encounter a certain part of a scene and you're not really clear about what's going on there, or you yourself as a hearer were stumbling over things, or if actors were still stumbling a little bit, maybe make note of that. And at the end, we'll try to come back and see how many of those questions we can address and comments we can consider. So that in this whole event, we are sort of making up a convention that is a Zoom reading. We're going to try with our stage managers who are back there, Jenna and Katie, to see if we can't keep actors in a sort of backstage space and allow them to make entrances to the Zoom, this Zoom platform when they come into a scene. I'm going to stay in the Zoom platform all the while and read a few stage directions just to make sure we're clear about where we are. I won't do things like read when a character is speaking in an aside. So if you hear somebody, some actor speaking as if he's speaking to himself in some crazy way, he's probably speaking in an aside or speaking to a character that we don't see or something like that. So just be aware of those conventions. I think that's all I want to say. And maybe just get us started and diving in. I will pause just to look at chats and ask Jenna or Katie if there's anything. Oh, I should just say one other thing. Over in Red Bank, I hear, I'm in Middletown at the moment, but I hear over in Red Bank, the storm has gotten pretty bad. And there was a bit of electrical on and offing. And so a couple of our actors who were there lost power for a little bit. We're hoping that's not going to happen again. If it does, just hang with us. Somebody will probably jump in and take over reading their part. We were at the start, you may have noticed, experiencing a few technical difficulties. That in this case, unlike sometimes in the theater, was not a euphemism. We really did have some actual high technical difficulties of people losing Wi-Fi and power. But I think we're restored, and Jenna says we're good to go. So I'm going to start us. So if we could have the actors at places, I have to get my script open. I can get us going. All right. So here we are. Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. The prologue. Enter the chorus.
Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured, piteous overthrows doth with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love, and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end naught could remove, is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage, the which, if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend.
Act 1, Scene 1. Enter Samson and Gregory of the house of Capulet with swords and bucklers.
Gregory, on my word, will not carry coals.
No, for then we should be colliers.
I mean, and we be in collar, will draw.
I, while you live, draw your neck out of collar.
I strike quickly being moved.
But thou art not quickly moved to strike.
The dog of the house of Montague moves me.
To move is to stir, and to be valiant is to stand. Therefore, if thou art moved, thou runst away.
A dog of that house shall move me to stand. I will take the wall of any man or maid of Montague.
That shows thee a weak slave, for the weakest goes to the wall.
'Tis true, and therefore women, being the weaker vessels, are ever thrust to the wall. And therefore I will push Montague's men from the wall and thrust his maids to the wall.
The quarrel is between our masters and us, their men.
'Tis all one. I will show myself a tyrant. When I have fought with the men, I will be civil with the maids. I will cut off their heads.
The heads of the maids.
I the heads of the maids, or their maiden heads, take it in what sense thou wilt.
They must take it in sense that feel it.
Ooh, me they shall feel while I am able to stand, and 'tis known I am a pretty piece of flesh.
Well, 'tis well thou art not fish. If thou hadst been poor John. Draw thy tool. Here comes two of the house of Montagues.
Enter Abram with another servingman.
My naked weapon is out. Quarrel. I will back thee.
How? Turn thy back and run?
Fear me not.
No, Mary, I fear thee.
Let us take the law of our sides. Let them begin.
I will frown as I pass by and let them take it as they list.
Nay, as they dare, I will bite my thumb at them, which is disgrace to them if they bear it.
Samson bites his thumb.
Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?
I do bite my thumb, sir.
Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?
Is the law of our side if I say aye?
No.
No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I bite my thumb, sir.
Do you quarrel, sir?
Quarrel. No, sir.
But if you do, sir, I am for you. I serve as good a man as you.
No better.
Well, sir.
Enter Benvolio.
Say better. Here comes one of my master's kinsmen.
Yes, better, sir.
You lie.
Draw, if you be men. Gregory, remember thy washing blow.
They fight.
Art fools. Put up your swords, you know not what you do.
Enter Tybalt, drawing his sword.
Art thou drawn among these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death.
They do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword, or manage it to part these men with me.
Why drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word, as I hate hell, all Montagues and thee. Have at thee, coward.
They fight. Enter 3 or 4 citizens with clubs or partisans.
Clubs, bills, and partisans, strike, beat them down. Down with the Capulets, down with the Montague.
Enter old Capulet in his gown and his wife.
What noise is this? Give me my long sword, ho!
A crutch, why call you for a sword?
My sword.
Enter old Montague and his wife.
My sword, I say. Old Montague is come and flourishes his blade in spite of me.
Thou villain Capulet, hold me not, let me go.
Thou shalt not stir 1 foot to seek a foe.
Enter Prince Aeschylus with his train.
Hail, ye subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighbor-stained steel. Will they not hear? What ho! You men, you beasts that quench the fire of your pernicious rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins, on pain of torture. From those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground and hear the sentence of your moved prince. 3 civil brawls, bred of an airy word by thee, old Capulet, and Montague have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets, and made Verona's ancient citizens cast by their grave-beseeming ornaments to wield old partisans, with hands as old cankered with peace, to part your cankered hate. If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. For this time, all the rest depart away. You, Capulet, shall go along with me. And Montague, come you this afternoon to know our farther pleasure in this case, to old Freetown, our common judgment place. Once more, on pain of death, all men depart.
All but Montague, Lady Montague, and Benvolio exit.
Who set this ancient quarrel new abroach? Speak, nephew. Were you by when it began?
Here were the servants of your adversary and yours close fighting ere I did approach. I drew to part them. In the instant came the fiery Tybalt with his sword prepared, which as he breathed defiance to my ears, he swung around his head and cut the winds, who, nothing hurt withal, hissed him in scorn. While we were interchanging thrusts and blows, came more and more, and fought on part and part, till the prince came, who parted either part.
Where is Romeo? Saw you him today? Right glad I am he was not at this fray.
Madam, an hour before the worship's sun peered forth the golden window of the east, a troubled mind drove me to walk abroad, where, underneath the grove of sycamore that westward rooted from the city's side, so early walking did I see your son. Towards him I made, but he was wary of me, and stole into the covert of the wood, I measuring his affections by my own, which then most sought where most might not be found. Being one too many by my weary self, pursued my humor, not pursuing his, and gladly shunned who gladly fled from me.
Can we take that line one more time? You're actually muted right now. I'm sorry.
Mich. Mich, do you hear us? You're muted, Mich.
Am I now?
We hear you now, Mich.
All right, sorry about that.
Take it again.
The entire monologue?
Yep.
Small part? Or
Many a morning.
Okay. All right, thank you. Many a morning hath he there been seen, with tears augmenting the fresh morning's dew, adding to clouds, more clouds with his deep sighs. But also soon as the all-cheering sun should in the furthest east begin to draw the shady curtains from Aurora's bed, away from light steals home my heavy son. In private in his chamber pens himself, shuts up his windows, locks fair daylight out, and makes himself an artificial night. Black importunus must his humor prove, unless good counsel may the cause remove.
My noble uncle, do you know the cause?
I neither know it, nor can I learn of him.
Have you importuned him by any means?
Both by myself and many other friends, but he, his own affection's counselor, is to himself, I will not say how true, but to himself so secret and so close, so far from sounding and discovery, as is the bud bit with an envious worm, ere he can spend his sweet leaves to the air, or dedicate his beauty to the same. Could we but learn from whence his sorrow grow, we would as willingly give cure as no.
Enter Romeo.
See where he comes, so please, you step aside. I'll know his grievance, or be much denied.
I would thou wert so happy by thy stay, to hear thy shrift, "Come, madam, let's away."
Montague and Lady Montague exit.
Good morrow, cousin.
The day so young.
But news struck 9.
Oh, ay me, sad hours seem long. Was that my father that went hence so fast?
It was. What sadness lengthens Romeo's hours?
Not having that which having makes them short.
And love?
Out.
Of love?
Out of her favor where I am in love.
Alas, the love so gentle in his view should be so tyrannous and rough in proof.
Alas, that love whose view is muffled still should without eyes see pathways to his will. Where shall we dine? Oh me, what fray was here? Tell me not, for I have heard it all. Here's much to do with hate, but more with love. Why then, O brawling love, O loving hate, O anything of nothing first create, O heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health, still waking sleep that is not what it is. This love feel I, that feel no love in this. Dost thou not laugh?
No, cuz. I rather weep.
Good heart, at what?
At thy good heart's oppression.
Why, such is love's transgression. Griefs of mine own lie heavy in my breast, which thou wilt propagate to have it pressed with more of thine. This love that thou hast shown doth add more grief to too much of mine own. Love is a smoke made with the fume of sighs, being purged, a fire sparkling in lover's eyes, being vexed, a sea nourished with loving tears. What is it else? A madness most discreet, a choking gall, and a preserving sweet. Farewell, my cousin.
Soft. I will go along, and if you leave me so, you do me wrong.
I have lost myself. I am not here. This is not Romeo. He's some other where.
Tell me in sadness, who is it that you love?
What shall I groan and tell thee?
Groan? I know. But sadly tell me who.
A sick man in sadness makes his will a word ill urged to one that is so ill. In sadness, cousin, I do love a woman.
I came so near when I supposed you loved.
A right good markman. She's fair, I love.
A right fair mark, fair cuz, is soonest hit.
Well, in that hit you miss. She'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Dian's wit, and in strong proof of chastity, well armed from love's weak childish bow, she lives uncharmed. She will not stay the siege of loving terms, nor bide the encounter of assailing eyes, nor ope her lap to sink seducing gold. Oh, she is rich in beauty, only poor that when she dies and with beauty dies her store.
Then she hath sworn that she will still live chaste?
She hath, and in that sparing makes huge waste. For beauty starved with her severity cuts beauty off from all posterity. She is too fair, too wise, wisely too fair to merit bliss by making me despair. She hath forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead, that I live to tell it now.
Be ruled by me. Forget to think of her.
Oh, teach me how I should forget to think.
By giving liberty to thine eyes. Examine other beauties.
'Tis the way to call hers exquisite in question more. These happy masks that kiss fair ladies' brows being black, puts us in mind they hide the fair. He that is struck and blind cannot forget the precious treasure of his eyesight lost. Show me a mistress that is passing fair. What doth her beauty serve but as a note, where I may read who passed that passing fair? Farewell, thou canst not teach me to forget.
I'll pay that doctrine, or else die in debt.
They exit. Scene 2. Enter Capulet, County Paris, and a servingman.
But Montague is bound as well as I, in penalty alike, and 'tis not hard, I think, for men so old as we to keep the peace.
Of honorable reckoning are you both, and pity 'tis you lived at odds so long. But now, my lord, what say you to my suit?
But saying over what I have said before, my child is yet a stranger in the world, not seen the change of 14. Let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ere we may think her ripe to be a bride.
Younger than she are happy mothers made.
And too soon marred are those so early made. Earth hath swallowed all my hopes but she's the hopeful lady of my earth. My will to her consent is but a part, and she agreed within her scope of choice lies my consent and fair according voice. This night I hold an old accustomed feast, whereto I have invited many a guest, such as I love, and you among the store. One more, most welcome, makes my number more. At my poor house look to behold this night earth-treading stars that make dark heaven light. Such comfort as do lusty young men feel when well-apparelled April on the heel of limping winter treads. Even such delight among fresh fennel buds shall you this night inherit at my house. Here all see, and like her, most whose merit most shall be, which on more view of many, mine being one, may stand in number, though in reckoning none. Come, go with me.
To
Go,
a serving
Sara.
man, he gives a list.
Go, Sara, trudge about. Through fair Verona, find those persons out, whose names are written there, and to them say, my house and welcome on their pleasure stay.
Find them out.
Capulet and Paris exit.
Find them out whose names are written here. It is written that the shoemaker should meddle with his yard, and the tailor with his last, the fisher with his pencil, and the painter with his nets. But I am sent to find those persons whose names are here writ, and can never find what names the writing person here hath writ. I must to the learned in good time.
Enter Benvolio and Romeo.
But man, one fire burns out another's burning. One pain is lessened by another's anguish. Turn giddy and behold by backwards turning. One desperate grief cures with another's languish. Take thou some new infection of thine eye, and the rank poison of the old will die.
Your plantain leaf is excellent for that.
For what, I pray thee?
For your broken shin.
Why, Romeo, art thou mad?
Mad, but bound more than a madman is, shut up in prison, kept without my food, whipped and tormented, and... Good e'en, good fellow.
Golly, good e'en. I pray, sir, can you read?
I, mine own fortune in my misery.
Perhaps you have learned it without book. But I pray, can you read anything you see?
Aye, if I know the letters in the language.
Oh, you say honestly, rest you merry.
Stay, fellow, I can read. Signor Martino and his wife and daughters, County Anselm and his beauteous sisters, the lady widow of Vertruvio, Signor Placentio and his lovely nieces, Mercutio and his brother Valentine, mine uncle Capulet, his wife and daughters, my fair niece Rosalind and Livia, Signor Valentino and his cousin Tybalt, Lucio and the lovely Helena. A fair assembly, whither should they come?
Up.
Whither? To supper?
To our house.
Whose house?
My master's.
Indeed, I should have asked thee that before.
Now I'll tell you without asking. My master is the great rich Capulet. And if you be not of the house of Montague, I pray come crush a cup of wine. Rest you merry.
He exits.
At this same ancient feast of Capulet sups the fair Rosalind, whom thou so lovest, with all the admired beauties of Verona. Go thither, and with untainted eye compare her face with some that I shall show, and I will make thee think thy swan a crow.
When the devout religion of mine eye maintains such falsehood, then turn tears to fire, and these who often drowned could never die. Transparent heretics be burnt for liars. One fairer than my love, the all-seeing sun there saw her match since the first the world begun.
You saw her fair because none else being by, herself poised with herself in either eye. But in that crystal scales you weighed your lady's love against another maid. That I will show you shining at this feast, and she shall scant show well that now seems best.
I'll go along. No such sight to be shown, but to rejoice in splendor of mine own.
They exit. Scene 3. Enter Lady Capulet and the nurse.
Nurse, where's my daughter? Call her forth to me.
Now, by my maidenhead at 12-year-old, I bade her come. What? Lamb! What? Ladybird! God forbid. Where's this girl? What? Juliet!
Enter Juliet.
Who calls?
Your mother.
Madam, I'm here. What is your will?
This is the matter. Nurse, give leave a while. We must talk in secret. Nurse, come back again. I remembered me, thou's hear our counsel. Thou knowest my daughter's of a pretty age.
Faith, I can tell her age unto an hour.
She's not 14.
I'll lay 14 of my teeth, and yet to my teen may it be spoken, I have but 4. She's not 14. How long is it till Lammastide?
A fortnight and odd days.
Even a rod. Of all the days in the year, come Lammas Eve, at night shall she be 14. Susan and she, God rest all Christian souls, were of an age. Well, Susan is with God. She was too good for me. But as I said, on Lammas Eve at night shall she be 14. That shall she. Mary, I remember it well. 'Tis since the earthquake now 11 years, and she was weaned. I shall never forget it, of all the days of the year, upon that day. For I had then laid wormwood to my dug, sitting in the sun under the dove house wall. My lord and you were then at Mantua. Nay, I do bear a brain. But as I said, when it did taste the wormwood on the nipple of my dug, it felt bitter, pretty fool, to see it tetchy and fall out with the dug. Shake, quoth the dove house, 'twas no need, I trow, to bid me trudge. And since that time it is 11 years. For then she could stand high low, nay, by the rood she could have run and waddled all about, but for even the day before, she broke her brow, and then my husband, God be with his soul, he was a merry man, took up the child. Yea, quoth he, dost thou fall upon thy face? Thou wilt fall backward when thou hast more wit, wilt thou not, Julie? And by my holidam, the poor wretch left crying and said, aye. To see how a jest come about, I warrant. I should live 1,000 years. I should never forget it. Wilt thou not, Jewel? Quoth he, and pretty fool, it stinted and said, aye.
Enough of this. I pray thee, hold thy peace.
I cannot choose to laugh. To think it should leave crying and say, aye. And yet, I warrant it had upon its brow a bump as big as a young cocklestone, a perilous knock, and it cried bitterly. Yea, quoth my husband, fallest upon thy face, thou wilt fall backward when thou comes to an age, wilt thou not, Jewel? It stinted and said, aye.
Since thou too, I pray thee, nurse, say I.
Oh, peace, I have done. God, mark thee to his grace, thou wast the prettiest babe that e'er I nursed. And I might live to see thee married once. I have my wish.
Marry, that marry is the very theme I come to talk of. Tell me, Dr. Juliet, how stands your disposition to be married?
It is an honor that I dream not of.
An honor. Were not I thine only nurse, I would say thou hadst sucked wisdom from thy teat.
Well, think of marriage now. Younger than you, here in Verona, ladies of esteem are made already mothers. By my count, I was your mother much upon these years that you are now a maid. Thus then, in brief, the valiant Paris seeks you for his love.
A man, young lady, such a man as all the world? Why, he's a man of wax.
Verona's summer hath no such a flower.
Nay, he's a flower. In faith, a very flower.
What say you? Can you love the gentleman? This night you shall behold him at our feast. Read over the volume of young Paris's face and find delight writ there with beauty's pen. Examine every married lineament and see how one another lends content. And what obscured in this fair volume lies, find written in the margins of his eyes. This precious book of love, this unbound lover, to beautify him only lacks a cover. The fish lives in the sea, and 'tis much pride, for fair without the fair within to hide. That book in many's eyes doth share the glory, that in gold clasps locks in the golden story. So, shall you share all that he doth possess, by having him, making yourself no less?
No less, nay bigger. Women grow by men.
Speak briefly. Can you like of Paris's love?
I'll look to like, if looking, liking move. But no more deep will I endart mine eye than your consent gives strength to make it fly.
Enter a serving man.
Madam, the guests are come, supper served up, you cold. My young lady asked for, the nurse cursed in the pantry, and everything in extremity. I must hence to wait. I beseech you, follow straight.
We follow thee. Juliet, the county stays.
Go, girl. Seek happy nights to happy days.
They all exit. Scene 4. Enter Romeo, Mercutio, Benvolio, with 5 or 6 other maskers, torchbearers, and a boy with a drum.
What shall this speech be spoke for our excuse, or shall we on without apology?
The date is out of such prolixity. We'll have no Cupid hoodwinked with a scarf, bearing a Tartar's painted bow of lath, scaring the ladies like a crow keeper. Nor no without book prologue, faintly spoke after the prompter for our entrance. But let them measure us by what they will. We'll measure them a measure and be gone.
Give me a torch. I am not for this ambling being, but heavy I will bear the light.
Nay, gentle Romeo, we must have you dance.
Not I, believe me. You have dancing shoes with nimble soles. I have a soul of lead, so stakes me to the ground, I cannot move.
You are a lover. Borrow Cupid's wings and soar with them above a common bound.
I am too sore, and pierced with his shaft, to soar with his light feathers, and so bound, I cannot bound a pitch above dull woe. Under love's heavy burden do I sink.
And to sink in it, should you burden love, too great oppression for a tender thing.
Is love a tender thing? It is too rough, too rude, too boisterous, and it pricks like thorn.
If love be rough with you, be rough with love. Prick love by pricking, and you beat love down. Give me a case to put my visage in, a visor for a visor. What care I, what curious eye doth coat deformities? Here are the beetle brows shall blush for me.
Knock and enter, and no sooner in, but every man betake him to his legs.
A torch from me. Let wantons light of heart tickle the senseless rushes with their heels, for I am proverb with a grandsire phrase. I'll be a candle holder and look on. The game was ne'er so fair, and I am done.
What? Done's the mouse, the constable's own word. If thou art done, we'll draw thee from the mire, or save your reverence, love, wherein thou stickest up to the ears. Come, we burn daylight, ho!
Hey, that's not so.
I mean, sir, in delay we waste our lights. In vain lights by day. Take our good meaning, for our judgment sits 5 times in that, ere once in our 5 wits.
And we mean well in going to this mask, but 'tis no wit to go.
Why, may one ask?
I dreamt a dream tonight.
And so did I.
Well, what was yours?
That dreamers often lie.
In bed asleep while they do dream things true.
Oh, I see Queen Mab hath been with you. She is the fairy's midwife, and she comes in shape no bigger than an agate stone on the forefinger of an alderman, drawn with a team of little atomi over men's noses as they lie asleep. Her wagon spokes made of long spinner's legs, the cover of the wings of grasshoppers, her traces of the smallest spider web, her collars of the moonshine's watery beams, her whip of cricket's bones, the lash of film, her wagoner, a small gray-coated gnat, not half so big as a round little worm pricked from the lazy finger of a maid. Her chariot is an empty hazelnut made by the joiner's squirrel or old grub, time out of mind the fairies' coachmakers. And in this state, she gallops night by night over lovers' brains, and then they dream of love. On courtiers' knees that dream on curtsies straight, on lawyers' fingers who straight dream on fees, or a lady's lips who straight on kisses dream, which oft the angry mab with blisters plagues because their breaths with sweetmeats tainted are. Sometime she gallops over a courtier's nose, and then dreams he of spelling out a suit. And sometime comes she with a tithe pig's tail, tickling a parson's nose as he lies asleep, and he dreams of another benefice. Sometime she driveth over a soldier's neck, and then dreams he of cutting foreign throats, of breaches, emboscados, Spanish blades, of healths 5 fathoms deep, and then anon drums in his ear, at which he starts and wakes, and being thus frighted, swears a prayer or two, and sleeps again. This is that very mab that plats the manes of horses in the night and bakes the elf locks of foul sluttish hairs, which once untangled much misfortune bodes. This is the hag, when maids lie on their backs, that presses them and learns them first to bear, making them women of good carriage. This is she.
Peace, peace, Mercutio, peace. Thou talk'st of nothing.
True, I talk of dreams, which are the children of an idle brain, begot of nothing but vain fantasy, which is as thin of substance as the air and more inconstant than the wind, who woos even now the frozen bosom of the north, and being angered, puffs away from thence, turning his side to the dew-dropping south.
This wind you talk of blows us from ourselves. Supper is done. We shall come too late.
I fear too early. For my mind misgives some consequence yet hanging in the stars shall bitterly begin his fearful date with this night's revels, and expire the term of a despised life closed in my breast by some vile forfeit of untimely death. But he that hath the steerage of my course direct my sail. On, lusty gentlemen.
Like drum.
They march about the stage and then withdraw to the side. Scene 5. Servingmen come forth with napkins.
Where's Potpan, and he helps not to take away? He shift a trencher, he scrape a trencher.
When good manners shall lie all in 1 or 2 man's hands, and they unwashed too, 'tis a fool's thing.
Away with the joint stools, remove the court cupboard, look to the plates. Good thou, save me a piece of marchpane. And as thou lovest me, let the porter let in Susan Grindstone and Nell. Anthony and Potpan.
Aye, boy, ready.
You are looked for and called for, asked for and sought for in the great chamber.
We cannot be here and there too. Cheerly, boys, be brisk a while, and the longer liver take all.
Enter Capulet and his household, all the guests and gentlewomen to Romeo, Mercutio, Benvolio, and the other maskers.
Welcome, gentlemen. Ladies that have their toes unplagued with corns will walk about with you. All my mistresses, which of you all will now deny to dance? She that makes dainty, she, I'll swear, hath corns. Am I come near you now? Welcome, gentlemen. I have seen the day that I have worn a visor and can tell a whispering tale in a fair lady's ear, such as would please. 'Tis gone, 'tis gone, 'tis gone. You are welcome, gentlemen. Come, musicians, play.
Music plays and they begin to dance.
A hall, give room, and foot it, girls. More light, you knaves, and turn the tables up, and quench the fire, the room has grown too hot. Ah, sirrah, this unlooked-for sport comes well. Nay, sit, good cousin Capulet, for you and I are past our dancing days. How long is now since last yourself and I were in a mask?
My lady, some 30 years.
What, man, 'tis not so much, 'tis not so much. 'Tis since the nuptial Lucentio. Come Pentecost as quickly as it will, some 25 years, and then we masked.
'Tis more, 'tis more. 'Tis, his son is elder, sir. His son is 30.
Will you tell me that? His son was but a ward 2 years ago.
Romeo enters, speaking to a servingman.
What lady's that which doth enrich the hand of yonder knight?
I know not, sir.
Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night as a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear, beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. So shows a snowy dove trooping with crows as yonder lady o'er her fellows shows. The measure done, I'll watch her place of stand, and touching hers make blessed my rude hand. Did my heart love till now? Forswear its sight, for I ne'er saw true beauty till this night.
This, by his voice, should be a Montague. Fetch me my rapier, boy. What dares the slave come hither covered with an antic face, to fleer and scorn at our solemnity? Now, by the stock and honor of my kin, to strike him dead, I hold it not a sin.
Why, how now, kinsman? Wherefore storm you so?
Uncle, this is a Montague, our foe, a villain that is hither come in spite, to scorn at our solemnity this night.
Young Romeo, is it?
'Tis he, that villain Romeo.
Content thee, gentle coz, let him alone. He bears him like a portly gentleman, and to say truth, Verona brags of him to be a virtuous and well-governed youth. I would not for the wealth of all this town here in my house do him disparagement. Therefore be patient, take no note of him. It is my will, the which if thou respect, show a fair presence and put off these frowns and ill-beseeming semblance for a feast.
It fits when such a villain is a guest. I'll not endure him.
He shall be endured. What, goodman boy? I say he shall. Go to. Am I the master here or you? Go to. You'll not endure him. God shall mend my soul. You'll make a mutiny among my guests. You will set cock a hoop. You'll be the man.
My uncle, 'tis a shame.
Go to, go to. You're a saucy boy, is so indeed? This trick may chance to scathe you. I know what. You must contrary me. Marry, 'tis time. Well said, my hearts. You are a princox. Go. Be quiet, or more light, more light. For shame, I'll make you quiet. What cheerly, my hearts?
Patience perforce with willing choler meeting makes my flesh tremble in their different greeting. I will withdraw, but this intrusion shall, now seeming sweet, convert to bitterest gall.
Romeo enters, taking Juliet's hand.
If I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, the gentle sin is this. My lips to blushing pilgrims ready stand to smooth that rough touch with a tender kiss.
Good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much, which mannerly devotion shows in this. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch, and palm to palm is holy palmer's kiss.
Not saints' lips? And holy palmers too?
Aye, pilgrim, lips that they must use in prayer.
Oh, then, dear saint, let lips do what hands do. They pray. Grant thou, lest faith turn to despair.
Saints do not move, though grant for prayer's sake.
Then move not while my prayer's effect I take.
He kisses her.
Thus from my lips, by thine, my sin is purged.
Then have my lips the sin that they have took?
Sin from my lips, I'll trespass sweetly urged. Give me my sin again.
He kisses her again.
You kiss by the book.
Madam, your mother craves a word with you.
What is her mother?
Mary, bachelor. Her mother is the lady of the house, and a good lady, a wise and virtuous. I nursed her daughter that you talked withal. I tell you, he that can lay hold of her shall have the chinks.
Is she a Capulet? Oh dear, I count my life as my foe's debt.
Away, be gone. The sport is at the best.
So I fear the more is my unrest.
Nay, gentlemen, prepare not to be gone. We have a trifling foolish banquet towards. Is it even so? Why then, I thank you all. I thank you, honest gentlemen, good night. More torches here. Come on, then. Let's to bed. By my fay, it waxes late. I'll do my rest.
All but Juliet and the nurse begin to exit.
Come hither, nurse. What is yon gentleman?
The son and heir of old Tiberio.
And what's he that's now going out of door?
Mary, that I think be young Petruchio.
What's he that follows here and would not dance?
I know not.
Go ask his name. If he be merry and my grave is like to be my wedding bed.
His name is Romeo, and a Montague, the only son of your great enemy.
My only love, sprung from my only hate. Too early, seen, unknown, and known too late. Prodigious birth of love it is to me that I must love a loathed enemy.
What's this? What's this?
A rhyme I learned even now of one I danced withal.
Anon, anon. Come, let's away. The strangers are all gone.
They exit. End of Act 1. So a little round of applause for everybody there. Yay. Can we get all the actors back? Come on back in. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. All right. So, yeah, there's the first act of Romeo and Juliet. Are we all back in here? Yeah. So, what does that do for you all you actors? Learn anything? Question anything? Anybody have comments, observations?
I just made an observation that if I were more like Kate, I could have a lot of fun with this. If I just breathe a little bit, I can, enjoy it a lot more.
Although, Duane, it's interesting you say that, because I agree, Kate was having a whole lot of fun. But even in your Queen Mab, I heard you start to feel that about it. It is hard if this is essentially like a cold read. But there is something that once you kind of let it happen, it can begin to overtake you, right? The energy of the discoveries in there, and you can have some fun with it.
Yeah.
Sarah, were you going to say something?
Oh,
you're always going to say something because you always have something wonderful to say. So,
sure. Okay. Yes, I'm. Yeah, I guess one thing that I think two things. The first one was that I was really struck by that little speech of Romeo's before they go into the party, right? Too early. Something like, I fear too early for my mind misgives some consequence yet sitting in the stars. Yeah. It was one of those things where I just sort of heard it really sharply and thought like, wow, this play is sort of about like fate and like undercurrents and kind of, like irrevocable, like inexplicable draws, like more than I kind of even thought. I just really heard it for the first time. And it seemed interesting also coming out of the mouth of a character who like, of the two of them, not that we've actually gotten to know me very well yet, which is also interesting. I feel like we've gotten to know him a lot better than at this point, but it's like, we've gotten to know him pretty well. And, like, it's such a deep moment coming from someone who seems to, like, in certain ways, have a hard time figuring out how to sort of live below the surface. Like, he has a really rocky surface, but, like, like, doesn't necessarily drop down a lot. And it's such a, like, sort of plumb line coming from him, which is super interesting.
It's amazing to me personally that you're saying that. It might have something to do with what Taylor was doing, because I marked that moment as well. I thought, I guess, not that I would ever have doubted Shakespeare before, but there was something that really connected there for me in a way that resonated about the impact of the Queen Mab on Romeo in that way, and that this notion of something that is like fate, that is like a dream maker, that kind of forces us to have these prescient thoughts about where something's going to go, and that gets laid in by Mercutio and the idea of Queen Mab visiting us and being, in a way, being part of our own genius and imagination that tells us where we're going to go and what we're going to do. And Romeo really takes that to heart and speaks this incredible undercurrent of a feeling of fate in there. Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, because I haven't read this play in a long like this in a long time, and I was struck by how reticent Romeo is at the top of that scene. He's like, "Yo, what's our excuse? What's going on? Like, you know, I don't want to come in here and start no trouble. You know, 3 brawls, all of that." He wasn't at the brawl, but he knows these brawls have happened before. And there's that little brief line about the dream that he had, which sort of launches us into this Queen Mab situation. So I think he's already like, nah, no, we can't. And he feels the dark clouds around the sort of around this situation, and the Queen Mab speech like really helps to, I think, like give him words for it. The thing that I found in this day just reading Romeo and Juliet is Romeo's trying to like find words for these like big feelings that he's having, just constantly, just trying to like figure out how to say, you know, what these things are, and you know, which is like being a teenager, just being a teenager.
Yeah.
Because I love how he has that whole thing, and he's like da 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 da, all this, you know, this. I feel like, you know, going in there is going to set the wheels into motion for my own death. But then he's just sort of like, well, forget it. Let's just go in there and just like, come on, lusty gentlemen, let's roll. So.
Yeah. If the audience is having any questions or comments or accumulating them, let's do that. But if any of you actors have things to say, I noticed another thing, which was right at the launch, which I thought was really great, which that Sara and Kate really seeded for me, that I watched and felt Shakespeare doing, which, at the risk of sounding sexist, but really sort of setting out that kind of bro energy, and that reactive, that very, very reactive, and its male expression of it, right? That is in there, and that Samson and Gregory, and then we see, and then Amanda totally, you know, just embodied that in that sort of quick, reactive nature of Tybalt. But it's interesting. I'm wondering, is there a sort of female version of it? Like, is Juliet going to show us something else that's about you know, maybe some counterpoint to that, or something? I thought it made me, especially since Kate played both Gregory and the nurse, just think about how different rhythms and energies of reactions happen. That nurse, you know, she could kind of live in that circular nature of telling that story over and over again in that way. Do you know? A very different energy. But
I definitely discovered for me this time that Samson, I feel like, is like straight up Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad, like early in the series, like before he's had any character arc. Like that's just like who that character is. It's just like,
yeah, exactly.
Which felt really right. Like,
great. Others, or if Jenna is there, or Katie, with any questions or comments from the audience. I could go and look here myself.
There's a nice long question here about love, I think.
If you see that, could you read that for us?
Yeah, so Carol is asking, I was wondering if all the talk of love early on is a form of gamesmanship. Benvolio tells Romeo to forget his love and encourages him to dream, but then Romeo sees Juliet and it's game over. He's in love with the daughter of his enemy. Is it now really serious and maybe not really about love at all? Question mark.
Oh, interesting. I do think we are in very quick succession, in a matter of a couple of scenes, seeing a real movement of our understanding of something to do with love, right? Romeo enters and has this fairly romantic notion of love, and it's almost abstract. And interesting that Rosalind is such a presence in a way, but never shows up. But it almost exists as an idea, as she almost does. And then he sees Juliet, and yeah, the game changes, doesn't it? One of the things, I don't know if this is what you're getting at, Carol, but one of the things I was thinking as I was just reading it this week is to be reminded in terms of that, in a way, by how quickly the action of this story happens. It takes 5 days from that first scene to their death at the end. And in that time, Romeo falls out of love, realizes real love, falls in love, they get married, he's banished, and they both die, all in 5 days. It's this really compact, somebody said this, Natasha said she was really struck by the tension that belies each scene and each interaction. It is quite compact in this way and tense throughout. And certainly a very fast experience of what love can be, even just over this first act.
It looks like,
yeah.
sorry I missed you in that last question, but Stephen also wrote in, I was struck by Capulet saying that it shouldn't be hard for us old men to keep the peace and being so willing to ignore Romeo being there. Is his age giving him some perspective on the feud?
Yeah, very good question. Another antithetical idea that comes up a lot, right? The youth versus age, old versus young. Where is our Capulet?
Here.
Yes, Abbey. Did in reading that and experiencing that, did that strike you in any way? That yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think there's a lot of it makes a big difference going back and reading it again, because last time I read it, I was in high school and I've seen it a few times, but it was very focused on like the feelings of Romeo and Juliet and all the young people for me, because it's who I pay attention to, and then reading it now, there's so much, there's about like the feelings of like love and hate and all those things and how they influence everybody in the play. It's not just about the two lovers. And I noticed like he's very focused on what's best for Juliet. And so what's best for her is like this party is important for her as well, like to hopefully find someone or like, I mean, it's very important for everybody in the play. And then, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. But I think also we see this even when we first meet them in that scene with the brawl, that there's, yes, the immediacy of that brawl, but of course it relates to a feud that is ancient. And in fact, nobody really knows where its roots are, how far it goes back. So maybe the older that you are, the further distance you get from it, as that person says, it's giving him some perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, I just said like I feel like you just get tireder, like in general, as you age. It's like there must be a sense in which like Capulet and Montague are at times just tired, and it's like they've raised this generation on these ideas that now maybe they're sort of too, like it's sort of exhaustion and perspective is altering them, but like, too bad because they raised their kids to sort of fight the same fight,
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I thought this time a lot was that idea, right? That like, oh, Romeo, you know, it's like he's got some sort of superficial passion for Rosaline and then sees Juliet and like, that's real love, right? Like, I sort of felt something really like wonderfully at odds with that, right? That like, why does that have to be the sort of overly romanticized way that we read the play, right? It's like, maybe, you know, it's like he has a huge crush on It's like, because high school is like huge crushes that all seem really legitimate, right? It's like you have a huge crush on Rosaline, and you see this other girl and you have a huge crush on her, and like her circumstances are, I've just been told that at 13 and a half years old, I have to get married to a guy that I don't know. So maybe like going into a party and seeing someone who's really cute and starts talking to me in this really hot way, like it's like, well, I'd rather him than Creeper, who I'm supposed to marry. You know, it's like, I'm not trying to diminish it. Like, I actually think there's something really beautiful about like how not like, you know, like about how it feels sort of circumstantially real and young and quick. And like, and I think that like what happens between them is still sort of like, it's both, right? It's like both, you know, sort of teenage and really familiar and really kind of not heightened and romantic, and also like a miracle in certain ways. You know, like I just think like I was sort of feeling that first part of it today of like, you know, we can be symbols for everyone else, but like reading the words inside of the play, they're just sort of very personal and like relatable circumstances that, you know, that are happening. And the transfer of passion is something that like, we don't have to connect a lot of ideals to. Like, it's happened to all of us. You know, we've been with someone that we've been like, that person just did something weird to me. You know, like, it doesn't mean that person's God. It just means like something real happened. Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Jenna.
I think we have someone who raised their hands, Jack.
Great.
So I'm going to unmute him and have him ask that question. Thank you for that suggestion, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I was gonna start diminishing Romeo, so I can't really argue with Sarah, but
argue with me.
I guess I was just I haven't heard or read the play in eons, and just remembering how Romeo is, I was kind of gonna diminish it because I remember almost thinking of his thing for Rosalind and his thing for Juliet as like the same essence. Like he quote unquote loves Rosalind, and then it doesn't work out, and he sees Juliet. And I feel like the difference between his thing with Juliet and his thing with Rosalind is like the thing with Juliet worked out. Like if it happened with Rosalind, like I don't think there would have been a Romeo and Juliet, but obviously like things happen for a reason. And I was also just confronted with, I'm not going to call Romeo a hypocrite because then I'd be calling probably myself and a lot of other teen guys like a hypocrite. But I think it's so interesting to like hear it again. Like he has the thing for Rosalind, he jumps to Juliet, he preaches being like this loving poet in the beginning of the play, and then he like murders the dude towards the end. And I just feel like he like alternates between like remorseful and like philosophical and all these things, and I can never really pin him down. So I think I'll just say he's interesting as a character.
Yeah. I mean, well, we don't want to jump ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No. But it is interesting to track. You know, a lot of people will say the kind of very condensed, very fast maturation that these circumstances force both of these lovers, but especially young Romeo, to experience over the course of these 5 days is a really profound maturing that he goes through. I wanted to go back to, go ahead. Sorry, Jack.
Oh no, I was just questioning. It was only 5 days that this all occurred over. I forgot.
Yeah, I know.
That makes it so much work. That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah. But which kind of makes, because that time I think is so interesting in this one. But back to what Sarah launched us off with, and that moment after Queen Mab, and this notion of fate and us containing, in some ways we contain our outcomes, right? I always find it so interesting, I don't know if you all do, but that Shakespeare, he was being very canny and understood that we knew the fate that well, first of all, literally that we would know this story, as he assumed probably rightly that we all did know about the two lovers who die from pyramid, from all sorts of sources. But that the thing I always love in terms of the experience of watching it is that he has the chorus come out and tell us at the very beginning that they're going to die, and in a way kind of lays the fate in on us even, so we contain it in the same way. So all the while that we are watching this, kind of hoping that they're going to meet, hoping that it's going to work, hoping that all these different things that he sort of sets us up and puts us on the precipice, like the nurse goes away to find out who he is, what's she going to come back and say, and all of that he kind of keeps us tethered in that way, knowing all the while that he already told us exactly what's going to happen. And yet we are hanging on every thread of where's it going to go and what's going to happen. It's just, I mean, I don't know, for me, that is at base kind of what's brilliant about just the craft of his playwriting. But relating to this idea of containing fate all the way through, containing the knowledge, I thought I saw other hands go up. Did other people have, other folks in the audience have something that they wanted to?
There's no other hands up, but this chat is starting to go wild right now.
Okay. Does somebody out there in the chat want to actually speak? Natasha looks like she's got a bunch to say. Can we get Natasha to talk?
Yeah, I can pull Natasha up. Hold on one second. Natasha, you're unmuted.
While we're waiting, since so much is about the quick turnaround with it, looking at it from the point of view of Benvolio, is that Benvolio is kind of your best and worst possible wingman in the world, especially for Romeo, because at the start, he genuinely cares about how Romeo's feeling, like, why are you sad? And just figuring out all of these little things, and then immediately going, you know what we're going to do? We're going to find you somebody else. Because Benvolio like a lot of quote-unquote typical wingman view is that love isn't necessarily real. It's all about finding the next person, the next thing, which is why he's so open. It's like, oh no, he doesn't respond with, oh no, it's okay, be sad, mope around. It's like, nope, going right to the next thing. And you'll get over it because he views it in the infatuation versus love thing, which also always comes out when you're discussing the text of Romeo and Juliet, is infatuation versus love, which is it particularly about the Romeo and Juliet, but also the turnaround between our first scene with Romeo to the romance with Juliet.
Yeah, I mean, except that it ends really badly. I would say Benvolio's doing a good thing for him, though, by in his mind, moving him away from an experience where he's spinning in and on himself to one where he can move forward and outwardly. Yeah, but yeah, maybe if Benvolio hadn't had this idea, he never would have met Juliet and they never would have died.
It is interesting, and it struck me this time reading through it, in the fact that at the end of Act 1, Benvolio goes, oh, that's the daughter of, oh, that's not good. Let's get here. But it's already too late.
Oops.
Like, you can pick anybody, but not that one. Oh, no. Darn.
Yeah. I see Marin out there, who offers up something really quite wonderful, and I think
I just
hearing.
unmuted her, so if she wants to.
Would you please? Hey there. How lovely to hear you.
So good to see you. Thank you so much for doing this. This is wonderful.
Oh, yay. So I think you're right on there. This thing that you said about the how and the language and how it works. Romeo, between his discussions of Rosaline and Juliet. Could you say that for us?
Sure, yeah. I think it's always important to look at how Romeo talks about Rosalind versus how he talks about Juliet. You know, he has all of these sort of, you know, oh brawling love, oh loving hate when he's talking about the feud, and then that kind of spills over into how he talks about Rosalind. And then the minute he meets Juliet, he starts on this like really astonishing metaphor of saints and hands and pilgrimages that she picks up on, and they build this metaphor together, and it actually creates a sonnet. And then if you look at the language after that sonnet is done, they start building another sonnet together.
Exactly.
And then the nurse interrupts them.
Yes, and they thread their sonnet together even more, don't they, before they get interrupted? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exquisite. Yeah.
I think a lot of talk of Romeo. I should probably say some stuff. You know, what's interesting, I think, about like being a teenager is like you only have such a frame of reference. You know, I think Sara so beautifully talked about like Juliet's circumstances. You know, she's like her mom is like, you got to get married right now, 13 and a half. Let's go. That's just what it is. And I think for Romeo, you know, the thing that changes between scene 1 and scene 5 is that, you know, he thought, you know, he has this relationship with Rosalind, and that is love. That is the highest it can ever go. And then, yeah, I think he has this like really disarming experience with Juliet, and she's, you know, she can teach some folks how to hold a torch and all that, and they're building language together, and something happens, and now that is love. Now that is the highest, you know, the highest thing that can come between two people. And the thing that I've been thinking so much about over the last like 15 minutes is about sort of the failure of language, and how, you know, when you're 16, love is one thing. It's, you know, 0 to 100. But, you know, the older we get, you know, the Capulets of the world, the Montagues of the world, the old heads, right? They know that, you know, under the umbrella of love, there's this like plethora of other words, right? There are these words like, you know, crush and, you know, all of these, you know, amorous, you know, you said some other word, not like true love, but it's not important. But we know that love can hold so much else, some good and some bad. But Romeo and Juliet don't know that. They're just like, well, 0 to 100, let's go. And 5 days, let's roll.
I mean, I do think, like, I've directed this play with teenagers, and it was awesome because they didn't need any, like, we didn't have to talk about stakes at all, which is just like what you spend 50% of your time talking about when you're in a room with adults. You're like, the stakes are low. The stakes are low. Can we raise the stakes, please? Like, let's raise the stakes. And they just like never needed that note ever. Like, because like the life and deathness of it was like, just like their everyday experience. It was like, yes, like my life feels like fucking whirlwind all the time. And like, I get it. And again, not to like in any way say, and that makes it less legitimate. Like, I think it's like the beautiful paradox of like, you know, we can look at it from an adult perspective and we can say, oh, it's teenage, but that doesn't make it not real and not massive. Yeah.
Okay, we are almost exactly at 90 minutes, which is what I was sort of hoping for. And hoping also that everybody in the audience feels well and truly kind of up to what's going on, what went on in this first act. You'll hold on to that. I think everybody has a link to the script that we're using, the Folger script. So if you want to go back before we meet again on Wednesday, May 6th, and just refresh, make sure you get all your plot elements and everything that's going on with all these characters when we return for Act 2. In the meantime, I think Kate's gonna do a little bit of some scene work actor training with everybody else to make sure that we can all Zoom act like Kate's nurse did today. And I will say, I thank Sara for little interventions of quick costumes. I don't know, I think you all noticed the costume changes, the masks. Yes. I think we're also learning some things that are helpful. Dan's changing up his voice with different characters was fun and very helpful too. So yeah. All right. Until next time, thank you all so much, and we'll see you out here in the ether. Okay. Bye all.
Everyone.